So you're thinking about making a move to the Midwest, but you can't decide between Chicago or Indianapolis. Two very different cities separated by only 182 miles. Do you like deep dish pizza? Do you like breaded pork tenderloin? Do you like a place that has millions of people or one that's a little bit smaller but still a big city? Let's take a look at some of the differences between Chicago and Indianapolis so you can make an informed decision. If you're new here, well, thanks for stopping by. I'm Brian, I'm a realtor in Indianapolis. Click that subscribe button so you can be notified about any upcoming videos that I put out. Now, I'm a realtor here in the Indianapolis area, but I'm not biased in terms of liking Indianapolis more than Chicago because I actually grew up in a south suburb of Chicago. I moved here when I went to college and I've lived here for over 30 years. So I know a fair amount about both cities to be able to give you hopefully an unbiased comparison, but I have lived here longer, so maybe not quite as unbiased. So we're going to take a look at 5 differences between Indianapolis and Chicago to help you make an informed decision. Indianapolis and Chicago are only separated by about 182 miles. If you drive that by car, depending on how quick you go, it's going to take you anywhere from about 2.5 to 3 hours to get between the two cities. That is one big difference between the two cities. Indianapolis, significantly easier to drive and navigate around than Chicago is. If you've lived any time or even driven through Chicago, you know what I'm talking about. There's a big difference in population between the two cities. Chicago has about 2.6 million people or so. Indianapolis has over 800,000, so nearly 3 times as many residents in the city of Chicago than Indianapolis. Now, I did a little bit of a ChatGPT breakdown of populations. In Chicago, with their 2.6 million people, you're looking at about 48% of them are white, 25% are African American, 23% are Hispanic, and 7% are Asian, and then, well, everybody else is other. Here in Indianapolis, we've got about 67% white population, 25% of our population is African American, 6% Hispanic, 3% Asian, and, well, again, the rest are other. So we have a significantly less diverse population here in Indianapolis than you would find in Chicago. The first category we're going to talk about is cost of living. Here in Indianapolis, the cost of living is about 20% lower than you get in Chicago, which is going to give you more bang for your buck. Indy has a good job market, especially in the areas of healthcare, logistics, education, and manufacturing. Some of the companies you may have heard of, Eli Lilly, major drug manufacturer, Allison Transmission, and Cummins Engines, while maybe not based in Indianapolis, isn't far away. And our unemployment rate is about 3.6% as of the making of this video, which also shows a good job market. Now, if you want to make more money, you probably want to go live in Chicago because their median income is going to be higher. However, with our lower cost of living here in Indianapolis, your money stretches farther. The median income here is about $60,000 a year. We have a flat income tax rate around 3.2%, which can actually make your money stretch farther than it would in Chicago. Living in Indianapolis is significantly less expensive than if you're in Chicago. Chicago is the 3rd or 4th, depending on who you believe, largest city in America. Groceries are more expensive, cost of living is more expensive. It's just more expensive. But the fact that it's a much larger city gives them more job opportunities. They do kind of specialize in healthcare, business, tech, manufacturing, and transportation. And some of the largest companies in the world are located in Chicago. You've got Boeing, United Airlines, McDonald's. Compared to Indianapolis, the unemployment rate, at least at the time of this recording, is higher in Chicago than Indy. It's around 4.3%. Median income in Chicago is about $65,000, which isn't that much more than Indianapolis, but a larger city gives you more job opportunities. The income tax in Chicago is around 4.95%, almost 5%. That's one of the major reasons that people are avoiding Chicago or leaving Chicago to move to Indiana, because their money can go farther than it can in Chicago. All right, the second area we're going to talk about is traffic and commute times. Now, I will say when I lived in Chicago or near the Chicago area, I was only a teenager, so I really wasn't driving around downtown very much, but I certainly made trips around there with my parents. Commute is a significant issue for people that live in and near Chicago. Here in Indianapolis, our commute generally isn't very long, number one. Number two, it's significantly easier to get around, at least by car. One thing we don't have in Indianapolis is a robust public transportation system. We have a bus system. It runs through downtown. It's convenient for those who need it and live nearby it, but it's really not used on a large scale like you're going to find in Chicago. People around Indianapolis generally go by car because otherwise you have the bus. We do not have a train system that takes us around downtown or to downtown, much like Chicago does. So you're kind of stuck with your car. The average commute time for Indianapolis residents is about 24 minutes, significantly better than what you're going to get in Chicago. Parking. When I have people who come visit me from Chicago and they see how much I'm paying for parking, they are flabbergasted. Average cost of parking per hour in the Indianapolis area is only around $2 to $4. Significantly less expensive than what you're going to get in Chicago. Now, are there places that charge more than $2 to $4? Absolutely. You're going to get anywhere from 8 to 10 on some occasions, depending on where you're at downtown. But even that is way less than what you're going to get in Chicago. And don't even get me started on going to a sporting event around here, because parking for an event might cost you $5, $10 to get a little closer to the venue, and you're up in the range of 15 to 20 bucks. Not in Chicago. Well, in Chicago, your average commute time is going to be about 35 to 40 minutes, and traffic jams can be a nightmare. There's lots of highways that go in and out of the city, and traffic can be backed up for hours. Car accidents, weather-related issues. You've got lots of concerns when you're trying to drive in and around the city. And once you get to the city, then you have to pay for parking. The average parking per hour is about $14 to $20, but that varies depending on location and time of day. Now, one thing that Chicago does have going for it compared to Indianapolis is public transportation. You've got the bus system, you've got the L. All of those things can get you around the city without you having to drive or worry about finding parking, but those can get very crowded at times, and then there's also a safety concern. Third area of comparison is going to be crime rate. Now, on the news nationally, we hear about crime rate in Chicago being out of control. Gang violence, random people just getting shot and killed downtown streets of Chicago. And I think that's most likely coming from the fact that, well, obviously, number one, that stuff does happen. But number two, Chicago is the third or fourth largest city in the nation. And so they're going to make national news with statistics. Indianapolis, believe it or not, has a higher crime rate per 100,000 people than Chicago does. In Indy, we get about 1,334 violent crimes per 100,000 people. In Chicago, that number is only 1,006 per 100,000 people. I say only as if that's not a big number. It's still a big number. Property crime is another area that Indianapolis, again, is worse than Chicago at. We're looking at about 3,700 property crimes per 100,000 people in Indianapolis. And in Chicago, that number is only 3,200 or so property crimes per 100,000 people. So believe it or not, crime is actually a bigger issue in Indianapolis than what you get in Chicago. Our fourth area is entertainment and dining. Now, Indianapolis, honestly, what are we known for in Indianapolis? I guess maybe breaded tenderloin, but I think that's kind of for the whole state. Beyond that, I don't know that we have a particular food that we are known for nationally, but we do have lots of food options. We have a really great beer scene in Indianapolis. We have lots of local breweries that make their own beer, and some of those are sold nationally. But locally, we have so many breweries and small pubs around that it really makes it a fun place to go out on a night with your friends, family, whatever, to go have a good time and try out some different local pubs and breweries. Now, sports, well, I guess it depends on what you're into. Here in Indianapolis, we do have some major sports. The Indianapolis 500, been going on for over 100 years, a very big deal in the Indianapolis area. People come from all over the world to watch that race. The Indianapolis Motor Speedway also hosts the Brickyard 400 for NASCAR and other racing events at various times throughout the summer. We have the Indianapolis Colts. We have the Indiana Pacers and the Indiana Fever, two very up-and-coming franchises in the basketball world. Here in Indiana, not just Indianapolis, we're known as the heart of basketball country. It's not like we invented basketball, don't get me wrong, but we are known nationally for our high school basketball. We have some of the largest high school basketball arenas anywhere in the nation, right here in the Indianapolis and surrounding area. Sports is a very big deal in the state of Indiana and Indianapolis as well. We do not, however, have a professional baseball team. We have a AAA affiliate team, the Indianapolis Indians, and they have one of the nicest stadiums anywhere in the nation. Even though it's just a minor league field, it's actually voted consistently as one of the top minor league sports facilities anywhere in the country. We also have a minor league hockey team. We also have a minor league soccer team that we are working on trying to get an MLS team, so we'll see where that goes. But if you want major sports across all of the different major sporting events, Indianapolis may not be the place for you. But if you just like people who support their sports teams, no matter whether they are good or bad, Indianapolis is where it's at. Entertainment and dining is especially good in Chicago. You've got some world-class entertainment and dining options at your fingertips, but you're going to pay a premium price for that simply because you're in Chicago. Chicago is known for deep dish pizza. Sorry, Indianapolis, you just don't compare. Then you're going to find some world-class dining establishments and some world-class bars, some of which are known all over the country. Let's talk sports. If you want professional sports, Chicago has got you covered. Some of the most widely known sports teams around the world, not just here in the local area or in the United States, you've got the Chicago Bears, you've got the Chicago Cubs, you've got the Chicago Blackhawks for hockey. There's the Chicago White Sox, which sometimes good, usually bad. There's a professional soccer team. In other words, Chicago is a great place if you want professional sports. Of course, you're going to pay a higher cost for tickets because it's in Chicago. And then, of course, you possibly are paying for parking once you get there, which is at a huge premium, especially compared to Indianapolis. But if you want to be in a place that has a great professional sports scene, Chicago might be the one for you. Our last category is going to be housing. Now, here in the Indianapolis area, at the time of making this video, the median price point for a single-family home in Indianapolis is about $265,000. Now, here in Indianapolis, that actually may be considered kind of high, but when you compare it to Chicago, not even close. A wonderful place for first-time home buyers to come and find their first place. Our property tax rate is about 0.88%. So if you take that $265,000 house with that particular property tax, you're going to be paying about $2,300 in property taxes for the whole year. Now, with housing, some people like to talk about schools, especially if you're moving with a family or moving here to start a family. Here in Indianapolis, we have IPS, Indianapolis Public School System. Now, IPS has about 60 schools, and compared to other areas of the state, IPS does perform lower. But I know that compared to Chicago, it's better. And they continue to make improvements year after year. The graduation rate at IPS schools is about 81%, very similar to Chicago. But if you live on the outskirts of the city, you may actually wind up in a suburban school like Carmel or Avon or Plainfield, possibly in Perry Township on the south side, where graduation rates are higher. You're going to have higher performing schools overall and potentially a safer environment. Housing in Chicago can be pricey. The median price for a house, single-family home in Chicago is about $370,000. That's over $100,000 more than it is in Indianapolis. And then there's property taxes. With property taxes, you're looking at just a little over 2%. So if you take that $370,000 house with a property tax of just over 2%, you're paying nearly $8,000 a year in taxes alone. And if you have a family and you're looking for good schools, Chicago Public Schools is a very large school system. It's actually the third largest school system in the whole country with over 600 schools. Of course, there are private schools that you could choose to go to, but when it comes to cost effectiveness of your schooling, Chicago Public Schools is going to do way better than you are with the private schools in the area. And the quality of Chicago public schools, well, that depends on location, as it does pretty much in any city. The graduation rate is about 82%. Now, if you look at the outskirts of Chicago, of course, there are plenty of locations around the outskirts of the city where you can find some smaller school districts with maybe some better performance. But if you're going to be within the city, Chicago Public Schools is what you're going to wind up with. If you're looking to live in a big city with a small town feel, Indianapolis may be right for you. If you're looking for a big city with a big town feel and millions of people, well, then perhaps Chicago is it. If you're looking to make a move to Indianapolis or in the surrounding area and would like more information, look in the notes below and I'll have a link to schedule a meeting with me. Simple 30-minute conversation, no obligation whatsoever, just for a chance for me to meet you and get some information for you. I'd love to help you if you're looking to make a move to the Indianapolis area. Thanks for watching. Feel free to share this with your friends, especially someone who might be wanting to make a move to Indy.